Okay, Dolores, we've started and people are trickling in.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We're just going to give a few minutes here for everyone to join us. The attendee count is exponentially rising. And I can see by the names there are some familiar ones, some new ones. Okay, I think we can slowly get started here. We've kind of stabilized the amount of attendees. So welcome everyone. Thank you so very much for joining us. The RDI team and myself are extremely excited to launch the Act for Rare Toolkit, which was designed to help implement the UN resolution to help call on policymakers worldwide, local, national, regional, to actually follow through with all the promises that are in this resolution. So I'm just going to quickly go through the agenda, just so you have a sense of what we're going to be doing. So Laura, if you could please just pull the agenda up on the screen, I would appreciate it. Thank you. So we're going to basically, during this webinar, be walking you through this toolkit. So my colleague Hlawulani, who is RDI Strategic Engagement Manager, is going to introduce the toolkit to you a little bit and introduce to you how we've decided to break down the UN resolution for you. I'm going to speak a little bit more about the policy and stakeholder side of the toolkit. We're actually going to have the very special chance of hearing from a patient advocate in Bulgaria about how she and her organization plan on using the template letter. Then our colleague Laura, who is our junior communications manager, is going to introduce to you the social media toolkit. And finally, Leah Jabali, our public affairs intern, is going to take any questions and comments from you, our amazing audience. So on that note, and this is really extremely important, please take the opportunity of this webinar to really engage. Write in the chat, ask your questions. Leah is going to be keeping track of any questions that you might ask in the chat during the webinar. And as you can see, we've set aside some time towards the end to really answer any questions you might have and address any comments. And we've also prepared some interactive elements during this webinar, so you will be forced by us to be interacting. So there you have it. Welcome again. And now I give it over to my colleague Hlawulani. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Dolores. It's good to see some familiar faces in the audience and to know everyone is calling from different parts of the world. Please feel free to use the chat to let us know where you're calling from, where you're joining us from. And also, if you have any questions as I'm speaking, use the Q&A, put your questions in there, and then Leah will let me know what they are. So let me quickly share my screen with you. I think the first question is, where do we find this toolkit, right, before we talk about what's in it? And the first place I would go is on the RDI website. Leah will put a link to the toolkit into the chat just now, so you can find it there as well. And the first part of the website that you should go to is under Tools and Resources. And there you'll find the new hashtag Act for Rare toolkit. You'll also find some of RDI's other toolkits, such as the hashtag UHC for Rare toolkit, which is the toolkit around universal health coverage for rare diseases. You can also, yes?
Oh, excuse me, Hlawulani. Yeah,
yes, of course, Laura.
The chat is disabled. people seems not to be able to put any messages.
Okay,
Sorry
cool.
about that all.
Okay, that's fine. I'll address that after the presentation. It will take me about 10 minutes to do so, and I'll let you know when it's fixed. In the meantime, please feel free to use the Q&A to put some of your comments in there. Thank you. Great. So if you scroll down the website, you can also access the toolkit right there at the bottom where it says Act for Error. You can find the Act for Error toolkit and just click there. Where I suggest you really look for the toolkit. So I've given you multiple options of places to find it because that makes it easier to find. But if you go under advocacy and you go to international advocacy, you'll find a page that's completely dedicated to the UN resolution. Why I particularly like this page is that on this page, you can find a direct link to the resolution, a little story about the resolution and how we all got there as a community, a list of all the countries that co-sponsored the resolution, the story behind the making of the resolution, some of the key operative paragraphs of the resolution, so the key commitments of the resolution. You can also find the impact of the resolution, and there you go, the toolkit yet again. So that's 3 different places where you can get to the toolkit. So without further ado, the Act for Rare toolkit. Great, so this is the page where you can find it. And really the Act for Rare toolkit is just a comprehensive list of tools and resources for the global community to act to call for the implementation and action on the UN resolution for persons living with a rare disease. So the toolkit is in the form of a PDF. If you just go over there, so those little arrows there, you can make it into a full screen document and view the entire toolkit. You can download it very easily by going right down there where it says download PDF. I think what is perhaps most interesting about the toolkit is that you can find many of the tools and resources in one Google Doc. So if you click right over there, you can find the social media tools. I'm just going to go right back. You'll be able to find the social media tools and some of the template letters that are involved inside the toolkit. I'm going to go step by step. Leah, please let me know if you have any interesting questions as I go. So this is the first page of the Act for Rare toolkit. We've offered you just a quick introduction on what the toolkit is about, which is really now about action. So the UN resolution was adopted on the 16th of December, which was such a celebratory moment for our community. But now what? How do we all call for action? The toolkit really serves 3 missions. The first is really to raise awareness about the UN resolution, that it exists, that we have achieved this incredible landmark text that calls on states to act. The second is to call on states to act, just to give you resources and template letters that you can use to approach your policymaker, approach officials, and really call for action on the promises made within the UN resolution. And the last is to help our global community act together as a community to address the challenges of persons living with a rare disease and just to give greater visibility to us as a community. The next page is just a quick table of contents, so that shows you where everything is. You will find just a little bit of information about RDI and the story towards the UN resolution. You'll find some useful facts and figures about persons living with a rare disease and rare diseases, as well as the operative paragraphs, which I will speak about. These are the commitments and the promises made by UN member states within the document. Dolores will talk in a little bit more detail about the resources that are for policymakers or to empower you to approach policymakers and officials. These include template letters and really just a stakeholder guide. Laura will do maybe what is the most exciting part of today's webinar, which is to look at some of the graphics, the GIFs, and the different social media elements that you can use to fire up social media. Great. So there we are about RDI and the UN resolution, about persons living with a rare disease, that was there. And this is really the meat of today's discussion, which are the operative paragraphs. So I think I may have not introduced myself, which is my own error. So what I am the Strategic Engagement Manager at RDI, which means I work really closely with our members and our membership community. And very often patient advocates will say, we're so glad we've gotten this UN resolution. It is such a complex text. What's in it? What have our countries really promised to do? And can RDI create a quick summary where we can find the key commitments made by countries? So the operative paragraphs that you see here are really the key promises made by all UN member states. It's really important that I repeat that every single member state of the United Nations has given their accord to the UN resolution. It was signed by consensus, right? So no country can say, you know what, I don't know what that resolution is about, because all of them have given accord, even though all of them have not all co-sponsored the resolution. So some of the key promises made within the resolution that I will pinpoint right now is the promise to strengthen primary health care, particularly with persons living with rare disease and their families in mind. To collect and analyze data, disaggregated data that really looks at income, age, race, sex, ethnicity for persons living with a rare disease. To implement and begin to draft national measures which can take the form of national plans and policies and frameworks around rare diseases. I would encourage you to take time and go through the toolkit after the webinar and look at some of these main operative paragraphs and key points and think about which ones fit into your advocacy mission, which ones you wish to really advocate for and ask for at either the national level or for the disease area in which you work. Great. So the next page follows on the operative paragraphs of the resolution. And I thought this page was particularly important for our discussion today, because there are two commitments that are made in that resolution that as a global community are particularly important to us. The first is to include persons living with rare disease within the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The 2030 Agenda is one of the most important UN documents, right? What it does is that it creates a framework, an outline for what the UN is going to do between 2015 and 2030. So by including persons living with rare diseases in that outline, it puts us in a much stronger position as a global community. So when you're advocating for rare diseases as the over 300 million people around the world, it is really a key point to say that UN member states have promised to include us within the 2030 Agenda. The other is the declaration around universal health coverage. In fact, the resolution goes much further than even we had thought that it would, in stating that universal health coverage should include persons living with rare disease and their family, and it covers issues around access to treatment and diagnosis, as well as being able to access healthcare without excessive financial burden. And without excessive out-of-pocket expenses. I think these two key UN policies are really important to keep in mind when you're reviewing the operative paragraphs of the resolution. Leah, are there any interesting questions in the chat yet, or am I perfectly clear?
So far, you're perfectly clear, but if anyone
okay,
has
cool.
any questions, please ask them and put them in the chat.
Yeah, please feel free. That's really reassuring. Great. So I thought we would do a quick poll together before I let Dolores really get into the Policymaker tools. So I'll stop sharing now. I wanted to get a good idea, well, from all of you, which of the main areas of the resolution you would like to make a big part of your advocacy going forward, right? Countries have made multiple promises within the resolution, but which of those commitments are you wanting to advocate for moving forward? So let me launch that poll. Great, everyone can see the poll? So, of the following commitments made in the UN resolution, which of the commitments do you wish to advocate for? Implement national measures, so national plans and frameworks. Include persons living with a rare disease in UHC, so universal health coverage. Address discrimination, particularly through raising awareness about rare disease. Collect, analyze, and disseminate data on rare diseases. Promote access to decent employment and decent work, particularly for persons living with a rare disease that are more at risk of impoverishment. Encourage the development of networks of expertise to support knowledge sharing and improve diagnosis and care. Great. Okay, great. Everyone seems to still be responding, so I'll wait a few seconds before I end the poll. I saw that there was one front runner really quickly, but things seem to be evening out a little bit. Okay, and I'll give you one more second. And oh, there we go. There's still results coming in. Great. I'll end the poll right there. Cool. Great. So I think the number one, and I have to keep in mind that math was not really my best subject in school, but I've got this one. So it seems to be networks of expertise for rare disease, which is really promising for us because this is part of the work that RDI is part of, building a global network for rare disease, and part of the work that many of you, many rare disease organizations are also part of with us. So that's great. National measures, I think as a community, we've been advocating for frameworks and policies for rare diseases for decades now. So it's good to have the resolution to back us in that. The collection of data, which is paramount because data leads great advocacy, and also the inclusion of rare diseases in UHC. Thank you so much for listening to me. Please feel free to go out, look at the resolution and look at the toolkit and the different commitments made by member states, and hopefully those will help to shape your advocacy. Dolores, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Hlawulani, and thank you to everyone for participating. So I'm obviously going to go back to the toolkit, and I'm going to walk you through a little bit more about the policy and stakeholder elements that are within this toolkit. So I'm just going to highlight some main parts that I think are most important. However, obviously, it's up to you to download the toolkit and read through it and use it as you see most fit and important. So we really wanted to introduce the UN resolution to you as really a policy document. So it's really an example of international public policy making. And I really want to drive this point home to all of you. Why? Because if it's a policy, it really needs to be acted on. Otherwise, you know, it can collect dust on the bookcase. There's no need for it otherwise. Now is really the time for us to implement everything that is in this actually very holistic document. So let's think about this resolution as a guide for decision-making and a commitment to taking specific actions. Keep in mind that actually in the global arena of public policy making, this isn't the only document that serves the global rare disease community, the global community of persons living with a rare disease and their families. Before this document, that is the UN resolution on addressing the challenges of persons living with a rare disease and their families, there was the political declaration of the high-level meeting on universal health coverage, and we usually call it the political declaration on UHC. So this document came 2 years before the UN resolution, and getting rare diseases into this document was really the process that lasted several years. So it's quite important to remember that public policy making in rare diseases is developed. It's not like a completely new novel thing. And in this declaration, UN member states agreed to, quote, strengthen efforts to address rare diseases as part of UHC. So there you have it. Now, this is a little bit of what I had already hinted to. I wanted to kind of break down in extremely simple way how policies are made and implemented. So again, this is for all of you to read through. I've broken it down into 5 steps. The first is to set the agenda. The second is to design policy. The third is to decide on how to adopt new policies. The fourth is to take action on the policy, and then afterwards to monitor and evaluate the implementation. So as you can imagine, we find ourselves in the action part of the policy-making cycle, implementation. This is where the commitments that were made in the UN resolution need to actually be adopted. Now, I want you to keep something in mind when looking at this breakdown here. Whilst the UN resolution does find itself in the kind of action bucket right here, any national policies that would implement the UN resolution would have to go through this whole cycle all over again. So just because we are honing in on action does not mean that we get to disregard all of these other elements right here. And one of the ways in which we have to actually get our hands dirty in these different elements is to interact with different stakeholders. So different groups and different organizations that can actually help put the UN resolution into action. So here we've mapped out different groups of people that could help each and every one of us in doing so. I think it'll be up to each and every one of you to actually analyze who is the most relevant in your ecosystem, but some that you could consider besides the obvious of the ministries of health and internal affairs would be, for example, local and national press, for example, potentially healthcare centers or research institutions, and I think actually very importantly, potentially other NGOs. They are kind of working in the same momentum as we are, so I think it's very important to have an antenna for what they are also doing. And on this page here, you can actually find a stakeholder grid. So what we wanted to do with this grid is kind of break down for you who can directly or indirectly influence policy. So just quickly, some examples of groups or institutions that can actually directly influence policy could be, for example, your local mayor. Like I said, potentially a relevant national department. And maybe even it would be worth, again, it all depends on your particular situation, on engaging with a regional institution, such as, for example, the African Union. We also wanted you to actually keep in mind that there are groups which can indirectly influence policy, but that are still extremely important for example, raising awareness of persons living with a rare disease and their families and the challenges that they face. So for example, any media institutions or civil society groups could be examples of such. Okay. Now, my personal favorite part is the template letter. So this template letter is a letter that you can address to a policymaker of your choice that you find to be the most relevant to your cause. It is currently available in English, Arabic, Mandarin, French, Spanish, and Portuguese. Obviously, you can also, please feel free and are encouraged to translate it into a language of your choice. So this template letter is really extremely important because hopefully by using it, you can address someone who can directly, so going back to this grid, who can directly influence policy. If you actually take a look at the letter, you will see that you're encouraged to give a little bit of context about your national situation. So to explain where you're coming from, what you would like to see, what you would like to gain, etc., etc. And I think it's a very powerful way of initiating a dialogue with policy makers. And just to say before I forget, actually, that the toolkit itself by Friday will be available in French and Spanish. That was just a little aside before I forget. So we will actually now hear from a national patient advocate, Nataliya Grigorova. She is the chairperson of the Huntington's Association in Bulgaria, and she's going to speak to us a little bit about how her organization plans on using this template letter. But just before we get to this video, I want to test your knowledge a little bit about how much you've actually been paying attention to what I've been saying. So, Hlawulani, could you please share, we have 3 poll questions that we would like to ask you. So, here is the first question. Which international public policy document first cemented rare diseases as a global public health priority? Hlawulani, I think you can see when yeah, perfect. Okay, here we go. Okay, so you've been paying very good attention. In fact, the correct answer is B. It was the political declaration on UHC, so in 2019, which most of you answered to, that first cemented rare diseases as a global public health priority. We have a second question. So in which stage of the policy cycle does implementing the UN resolution fall? A few more seconds. Here we go. Let's see the answers. Okay. Action. Yes, again, most of you got it correct. Definitely it falls within the action part of the policy cycle, as it's now time to implement the promises that are on paper. And one more question for you. Can national policymakers directly or indirectly influence policy? Yes, exactly, directly. In an ideal world, at least, policymakers can directly affect the implementation of the UN resolution that we are speaking about. Okay, cool. So I'm going to give it over to Laura, who is going to play for us this video on using the toolkit and the template letter in Bulgaria. Take it away.
Thank you, Dolores. I will share my screen to you, and don't hesitate if the sound is not right or anything. Here we go. Can you all see my screen? Yes.
Hello, everyone. I'm very pleased to be able to speak in front of you today. My name is Nataliya Grigorova, and I'm from Sofia, Bulgaria. I'm one of the founders and chairperson of Bulgarian Huntington Association. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more how we established our organization, and of course the main topic it will be how we are going to use the UN resolution and the toolkit provided by the Rare Disease International. So back in 2013, a very close friend of mine started to show symptoms of Huntington's disease. This was a husband of a very close friend of mine. Huntington disease is a rare neurological disease with no cure for the moment. Of course, there were other families with AHD coming back to us. So in 2014, we managed to register our association. As I told you, Huntington's disease is an incurable disease with very severe symptoms, motor, cognitive symptoms, and with devastating consequences for the family. So, facing these challenges and facing that there is no cure, no medical way to help these families, we decided that the most important thing is to provide them with support, with psychological support, with support from social workers, with physiotherapy. It is surprising that so few policies addressing the needs of the people with rare disease in Bulgaria. It is a really very big problem that these people are just not existing for the policymakers and for our institutions. Of course, we have made a lot of efforts to communicate with the different institutions which are responsible for the support of the families affected by rare diseases. So, having the UN resolution actually give us another reason to contact them. And this is how we plan to use UN resolution. We plan to use UN resolution by addressing our Ministry of Social Affairs and giving them one more reason to establish and provide the social care needed for the families affected by rare diseases. I really think that the UN resolution gives us a very powerful tool to address so many challenges and so many injustices which families are facing. If you see, for example, the resolution, and if you read the resolution, you will see that everything is inside. This is one of the very big breakthrough in a global level to illuminate the problems of the families with rare diseases and to bring on the table what are the needs, what must be done. So for me, it's a personal responsibility, and for our community, it's a personal responsibility to follow this opportunity and to follow the strive of the international rare diseases and Eurodis and other people which have made this true. And I think that using the UN resolution and the toolkit of Rare Disease International is a great opportunity for us on a local level to achieve a change in the life of our community, of the life of the families affected by rare diseases. And of course, to try to make our local institution, our local and national institutions and policymakers to make a real commitment to improve the lives of the people living with rare diseases within our country. Of course, we must not forget that this is a global effort, and when thinking for so many people around the world fighting for this to come true and fighting for their rights to come true, it gives us a strength to continue, and we never forget that we are not alone, and stronger together we can achieve a better future for the families affected by rare diseases. So please do use the toolkit and the template letter for the policymakers addressing the UN resolution and addressing all the challenges of the people with rare diseases in your national level, in local level. Ask the institutions to make a commitment and to give them a reason to improve the life of the families affected by rare diseases. I wish you a big success in your countries, and I wish you really to be able to change even a little bit the life of the people living with rare diseases in your countries. So greetings from Bulgaria, and I wish you a very fruitful meeting. Bye.
Okay, there we have it. Nataliya couldn't join us live today. She already had an important meeting planned, but we really want to genuinely thank her nonetheless for attending in this way. So you've heard it from her, you've heard it from us. We need to implement the UN resolution, and using this toolkit is hopefully one way of doing so. I'm going to now pass it over to my colleague Laura, who's going to explain to you in more detail about how you can actually specifically use the social media part of the toolkit to do so. Take it away, Laura.
Thank you, Dolores. I'm very happy to be with you all today to present you like one of the most exciting parts of the toolkits, the social media kits. You know that social media are now a powerful tool to communicate from everywhere and to anyone in the world. So I saw in the Q&A an interesting question from Jeffrey, who is not part of an organization and want to get involved. The social media parts is exactly what you can use, and we can note also that you can use the template letter and send also the letter even if you're not part of an organization, of course. So we're gonna go through the social media toolkit together, and at the end I would really like us to post together a post on Twitter to say to everyone that the toolkit is available online. So if you want to be tagged in the post, please add your Twitter account name in the chat, and Leah will send it to me and I will include as much as I can. So here we go. Okay, so now let's go back to the toolkit. So when you arrive on the toolkit, you have a social media kit and a big button saying download. When you click on this, you will arrive on the drive Hlawulani showed earlier. And in this part, you will have several resources recreated for you to post on your social media, particularly on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So it is the platform we are in. But if you want anything else in the toolkit that we have not included yet, please feel free to tell us also, and we will do what we can about that. You will find throughout the toolkit some post suggestion, some images, some animated images that works really well in particular for Twitter. Another important part, which I will go back later, is to create your own social media post, your own visual, your own text. And then you will also find some banners and virtual background. Like if you like the background we have right now, you will be able to download it and display it during your virtual meeting, for instance. So if we go back, first, throughout the social media kit, you will also find guidelines to help you make the post the most attractive as possible. So please display the hashtag Act4Rare on your post, and also think about tagging RDI on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook, and we will be really happy to retweet your post. If we go first through the messages, we created 3 messages on Twitter and 1 you can customize. The aim of this post can be, for example, to call on your policymakers to implementing national measures, to ensuring equal access to education, to build UHC for all. But if you think that all the commitments are more relevant for your organization, you can also make your own post on this by choosing another focus. So for instance, if you go through the drive, you will arrive on the text part, and you just have to copy and paste this in your social media. Now let's go to the customize part 1. So I just created a template when you can add any sentences you like, any hashtag you like, to customize really the post you want to display. So we have 4 options for Twitter, 2 for Facebook, with some option for hashtag you can add, because yeah, as you know, like on Facebook and LinkedIn, we are not limited in the word we can add. So feel free to display as many hashtags as you want to tag any organization who may be interested, for instance. We have also 1 post for LinkedIn, and you can create your own posts for other social media accounts. Now for the visual parts. You will find several images for Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And the advantage of the toolkit is that if you click directly on the image, you will directly go in the drive, in the image you were looking at. So for instance, I will show you how it works for the animated image. We love using this, for example, for Twitter. It's like permit to get the accounts more live. So if I click on this, I will directly arrive on this, and you can just download it here to display it on social media. At the end, we also created for you some social media visual you can really customize, because all you will find in the toolkit is really to help you saving time in displaying the words. But if you want to create another visual, I don't know, you don't like the blue one, well, feel free to create another one. Feel free to display any message you want by adding the hashtag. And to help you to customize it, you can add this one to, for example, Canva, Photoshop, and you can add your own logo, add your own text, and display it on your social media accounts. If you also feel you don't really know how to do it, and you will be interested in a webinar on like social media tips, please feel free to tell us also, and it will be a pleasure to do it maybe another time. You will also find some logo if you want to create it from scratch. And then to finish on this, you will find some social media cover. For instance, I added mine on my social media Twitter account. So as I said, even if I was not part of an organization or anything, I could do it from my own social media accounts without any problem. You can add any email signature and download the background just over there. Now, I hope it has been helpful to you, and I would like to go straight to Twitter right now to post a message saying download the toolkits, because now we communicated from RDI accounts a lot about like, please join to the webinar, and we see that you are numerous to come, and that's a great news. But now we have to communicate about the toolkits, and so to make it available to the most of people as possible. So I saw many people from all over the world, but and I think there is over 95 participants. So Hans posted, I will share to you the link so you can retweet it from your accounts. Leah, do we have any people who had their Twitter accounts in the chats?
Yes, there are many people who responded. I sent you the list.
Great. And I advance, I'm sorry, because I think we will be able to have maybe 3 or 4 accounts. Oh yeah, that's great. I saw Ellen from the Willem Foundation, for instance. Yeah, great. I also saw, yeah, and Tabeling from Lesotho Rare. Great, let's see. Yeah, we can add some more. Rare Islands, glad you can join. Dushan also, great. Let's see if we have some space, and maybe for one more. Yeah. 95 rare. Up. Great, so I posted right now, and I will share you the link. Feel free to retweet it as much as possible. And thank you for listening to the social media kit. I hope it was useful to all of you.
Okay, great. So now we will have time for a little Q&A. So I noted down the questions you raised, but you will also have time to raise some new questions now. So Jeffrey already was saying that he's a person living with a rare disease himself and is would like to be more involved. Laura, you already mentioned how he can participate and become more involved. Does someone from the team has some more ideas? Yeah,
Yeah, I think that was a really good question, because it's really one of the reasons the toolkit exists, is that you should be able to get involved at different levels in different ways. So if you are a civil society organization and you have good relationships with your national officials or policymakers, please send that policymaker letter. But also if you're just a person living with a rare disease and you want to send it to your mayor, your local representative, and when I say just, I mean that you're not involved in an organization, but you are yourself a powerful advocate, you can still send that letter out. What I like about social media, and Laura, thank you for pointing this out, is that it's made speaking out very democratic. So one of the big challenges faced by our community is the challenge of becoming more visible. And so the more visible we are, the stronger we are, and it takes many voices to make us visible. So Jeffrey, I would really say the first step is use the platform available to you. If it is social media, get on social media. If you're in contact with your local representatives, let them know that the UN resolution does exist, that your state has signed up to it. And sometimes even just raising awareness at the family and friends level about certain things happening at the national level or the international level for persons living with a rare disease is a really strong advocacy action. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Leah, could I just very super duper quickly also add, thank you very much, Hlawulani. I just want to say, you know, it's really important to not be overwhelmed necessarily by this document and seeing it just as kind of very policy heavy, very implementation heavy. I would actually encourage you to even just go read the UN resolution, read the parts of this toolkit where we summarize the UN resolution, because that will make you cognizant and aware of potentially what already exists in your nation or what should exist, right? So being aware of your rights and then learning how to advocate for them is also really important.
Thank you, Dolores, for adding that. There were some more questions on the template. So Olivia, for example, asked whether she should rather use the newer template or the earlier UHC template. So do you have a response?
Definitely this newer one. So the UHC one was different in nature. It was targeting different things. This template letter is very specifically written and structured for the UN resolution and specifically for the promises within it. And I just want to again say, please, when you do use this template letter, make sure to very much customize it towards the situation in your country. It's important that, you know, you educate policymakers who probably actually, unfortunately, don't have a good understanding of rare diseases, much as Nataliya said in her video. So it's important for us to tell them, you know, this is missing in our country, this we have, but it's not very well developed. We have this many people suffering from this disease, etc., etc. Like getting the facts out there, getting knowledge out there, increasing awareness. All of these are major steps in our journey.
Great. Another question, Ramaya wrote down, we write to our policymakers by using the template letter, but how do they then express their commitment if they do?
Can I, and maybe I think Dolores may be able to give a fuller response. What I've seen often happen is that the template letter is kind of that first step and opens up the door to a bigger conversation about what can happen at the national level or about rare diseases to begin with. So it just becomes really one of the ways to open up that conversation. I also think depending on your national context and the policymaker you're in front of, your asks to them may also vary. So if you're speaking to a localized policymaker, you may want that ask to be really specific to the local environment that you're in. If you're speaking to an international policymaker, let's say a UN representative, then that ask should also be geared maybe to your country's presence in the more international sphere. So I definitely think, and I think the stakeholder guide helps in this as well, is to understand really what are the objectives of that policymaker, what do they represent, and what parts of the structure can they move in very real ways.
Yeah, and I would just add, you know, Ramaya, the template letter, it's not just necessarily for one person or one organization to send it. It can be sent in conjunction with other organizations or persons or patients, etc., etc. And I think that also kind of changes what you want to put in the letter and what you expect to actually get out of the letter, and consequently how a policymaker would respond, what would be the next steps, right? Of course, now just to highlight one more thing in that letter, a major part of it is highlighting what you want to be the next step. Like, do you expect a meeting to be the next step, a letter expressing their support, etc., etc. So it's important for us to be extremely clear about what we expect, what we want from them. I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions.
I think it's time for the word cloud now. So
Okay.
I already
Go ahead, Leah.
thank you for everybody who asked their questions. We will note them down. Also really happy to see that you're interested in a social media webinar. So Laura will definitely take this on. So I will again share the link where you can share your thoughts on the toolkit. So please go on mentimeter.com and enter the code that you'll see. You can see the code here again. It's 13314315 on menti.com. And you will see a question, what does the Act for Rare Toolkit mean to you? And you'll be able to add your thoughts in very short, your hopes and also visions you have when using this toolkit. So I already see very big collaboration and solidarity. I think this is beautiful to see that, as the rare disease community, we are collaborating more and more together to take action on addressing the challenges for persons living with a rare disease. I see that's groundbreaking and transformative. I mean, we achieved a big milestone in last December, so I definitely agree. There are more words coming. Amazing empowerment, advocacy booster, community. Great. I think this is just a very beautiful way to end this webinar. So I'll leave it on for a couple more seconds and then I'll give the floor back to Dolores.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Leah. It's going to be wonderful to see that word cloud again later. And I'm very happy to be seeing the word solidarity in that word cloud. And I think it's a really fitting and nice way to end this webinar where nearly 100 of us all over the globe have actually joined in solidarity to implement this UN resolution. So really from the bottom of our hearts, thank you very much again for joining. We remain at your disposal. You have our email addresses. We are here to be contacted, to support, to help you, and we hope that this toolkit has done so. Like I said, the template letter is available in 5 different languages. The toolkit itself will be available in French and Spanish on Friday. If you have ideas for more translations, please, again, do let us know. And that's about it. Sending you courage wherever you are in the world, and thank you for being here. Have a great rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening.
Great. Thank you, everyone.